So before we get started,
Yes.
we have a fun little gift for you guys.
Okay.
We wanted to get you guys something because we're very proud that you guys made it to episode 200.
Oh my gosh.
And for all of the work that you guys put in.
Oh, get out of here. Get out of here. Yeah, dude.
No way.
From ReminderMedia, this is Stay Paid, a sales and marketing podcast on a mission to help you close more deals and retain more business. Hosted by the VP of Marketing, Josh Steik, and ReminderMedia's president, Luke Akery. So get ready to hear the golden nuggets that will allow you to live a life of freedom tomorrow, but only if you take action today.
Happy 200th episode, everybody.
We made it, Mom.
It
we made
is episode 200 of Stay Paid. I don't know if we ever had any idea that we would ever get to 200 episodes.
Nope, we probably thought
I was telling
it wasn't.
Arielle before the podcast, I said, I feel like I came in on Stay Paid like halfway into it or something like that.
No, but you were only like a couple episodes in.
Episode
It's
4.
like episode 4.
You know, I'll tell you a story is like, because our original guest, Sefton, our co-host, Sefton and I were doing it at the very beginning. And it was one of those moments for people that are wondering, like, why did we make the switch or why did we bring you on? It's when you got on as a guest and then I felt the difference in like the podcast. I was like, dude, you got to be on the whole time. So we kept Sefton on for a while, and then eventually it just became you and I. It's kind of like the first episode of The Office or
Just
season.
the two of us, sleepy pals. Hey, I got to show everybody. We have a guest with us today, producer Arielle, who is normally behind the scenes on the soundboard and running the cameras. She is on this podcast because we're going to do a little bit something special today. But first, I wanted to show this off because this team here at Stay Paid and ReminderMedia is so amazing. Arielle, Jesse,
And Andrea.
Andrea,
helped out with this
producer
too.
Andrea, and then Maddie.
And Maddie McCoy.
So Maddie, who used to help out with Stay Paid and everything, she actually made these shoes. You got to check out the video to see these special edition Stay Paid shoes. We'll post pictures in the blog also. But it's got golden nuggets painted on. They're white Converse. It's got a Stay Paid patch. It says "Take Action Today" on the back. I hope I'm getting a good shot here for the cameras. But man, thank you guys so much. You're going to start seeing us in these shoes every episode.
Yeah, everybody knows Josh and I love Converse. I basically wear Converse every
that
day.
was the thing when we wanted to get you guys a gift. We were like, well, what do we get?
Yeah.
And we said, well, they wear Converse all the
Well,
time.
ironically, I didn't wear my Chucks
I know.
today because I had worn them the last podcast because we're recording 7 podcasts.
I
this
know.
week.
This is a crazy week. for
But we're going to
lot
do a
of
little
content.
bit of question and answer time. So we actually sent an email out and sent some messages out on social media to all of our listeners. So thank you so much for sending in your questions. Arielle is here to help moderate this and kind of throw some questions at Luke and I. But
Yeah, 200 episodes in.
200 episodes.
See what we
200
got.
episodes,
Thank
200
you.
questions. I hope you guys are ready.
200 questions.
We have 200
2
questions.
hours later.
I actually didn't start the timer for this one because I
I
said,
did.
we can make it
I
however
got
long
it
we
over
want.
here.
Yeah.
But we can make it
Let's
however long we want. so.
fire away.
Okay, are you guys ready for the first one?
Let's do it.
We're coming out strong with this first question.
All right.
Are you ready? The first question is, do you and Luke, I guess this was directed at you, Josh, do you and Luke ever not agree on a topic or answer to a question?
No, I like my job too much. So I make sure not to disagree.
I don't know. I'm trying to think
Luke
back. I
ever.
think in the 200 episodes, we have disagreed politely. I don't think
We actually need to be better. Like we talk about this all the time. Like we need to be better with that. Because,
better at controversy.
yeah, well, better at just taking a stand and picking an opinion.
Yeah.
Right. Versus and this is part of me because I come from the marketing world. I come from the creative world where it's every idea matters. And it's like you want to test everything literally. So I don't normally take a stand against anything, but there have been some times, I can't think of anything specific, but there have been some times where we've approached things from different standpoints.
different ideas. You approach things usually from a more scientific marketing perspective. I approach things more from a motivational pound the pavement type.
But we looked at
perspective,
this
which is
in
good.
our PIs because we did a free predictive index.
Yeah.
Right. So you guys can do that as well over at ReminderMedia.com/StayPaidPI. And one of the things was we need to take a stronger stance or flesh out disagreements more. That was one of the recommendations it had for us because we both tend to be well, whatever works is what we'll do. And I love that and in some ways, but
It
in
helps
other
in
ways,
some
it
ways.
doesn't like bring out some new ideas.
It's a principle in life is like whatever your strength is also plays out in a weakness. I will tell you a behind the scenes never mentioned before for 200 episodes. We actually interviewed a person that we did not release their episode.
That's right.
And one of the reasons why we did not release it is they said a bunch of things we just like, they kind of attacked the audience of real estate, like called them a bunch of idiots and stuff like that. And we weren't expecting it on the podcast, but we pushed back on them. But when I looked back on the episode, my biggest regret was not pushing back harder, because I don't know if it's about being on film and you're trying to be polite to guests and they're spending their time dropping their knowledge. So you're not there to harass them. This is not an interrogation. It's more value driven.
Yeah, this isn't a 60 minutes interview where we're trying to dig to the truth.
Here's the thing I would tell people, which is a great marketing lesson. It's a great business lesson all around. If we would have been way more strong and authentic on that probably would have been one of our most popular episodes.
Yeah.
Because there's probably people who would have agreed with that person's camp, probably people who would have agreed with our camp. And so it was a mistake that we learned in our 200 episodes that we won't let happen again. Cool. Anyways, moving on.
What a great way to end that. But we won't let it happen again.
Never again.
Fantastic.
It might get argumentative.
Okay, next question. In a world overfilled with Stepford Realtors, how does one determine and articulate their true differentiation from other agents without resorting to corny tactics?
I don't know what they mean by corny tactics. I think maybe gimmicks,
Well, I
of
think
like
it's the
your
over-
one-liners,
I
like
think
Dan
it's
the
the
Man, the
over-the-top.
real estate,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Dan, the real estate man.
Yeah, Dan the real estate man. That's what it is. Yeah.
I think it's like the idea of like being over polished, over the top, over enthusiastic, right? And I think, one of the ways to differentiate yourself is to really focus on your niche and who you want to attract. So if that's not the type of client that you want to attract, is the type of client that's going to naturally lean towards that type of realtor, like don't do that. Be your authentic self, because ultimately your vibe attracts your tribe. And if you are trying to be that other person, you're going to end up working or bringing people in that like you don't even want to work with. So find your niche. This is where niching down really, really comes into play. Is you've got to know yourself, you got to know who you are, and then you have to be able to identify that on paper so that you can start to go after those folks in actual practice. Yeah, I think is what they're asking.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with the niching down. I think an exercise that you could probably do is put down on paper. So if you're a veteran agent that have past experience, call your clients and ask them, why did they use you?
That's a great idea.
Like go and reach out to, all of your past clients or the ones that you feel like you can. Ask them, hey, what did you love about working with me? And why did you use me? That will arm you up with the value proposition that will help you get your next deal. Now, if you're new and you're like, man, I don't have any past clients, so I don't know why people use me. Well, then you need to sit down and write down, why did I get into this business? And what is unique about me? And it doesn't mean unique in terms of all of humanity, right? So I play piano. That's not unique in terms of humanity, but it is unique. Like it is unique about me, right? And so like you want to write down all the things that are unique about you and then ask yourself like, what is it that you want to bring to the market that you're saying? What is the story that you want to tell? And the thing that I think that differentiates people is ultimately their authentic passion of why they're doing what they're doing. That might sound corny, but it ain't corny. That's the truth. People buy from me on the phone. Like, who was it that we just interviewed? Jarrett James, right? So we just interviewed Jarrett James. I'm not sure if it's going to release yet or not, but incredible interview. But he talks about like visibility trumps ability. And I think that applies to this from the standpoint of like, your unique value proposition doesn't have to be the most talented. You don't have to be the most articulate or the best in real estate, know the market the best to win business. You just have to be the most passionate about your story and go out there and scream it to the universe, because then it applies to what you said, is that you'll attract the people that love that story.
Yeah.
So
who sent that in? Do we have who submitted that? I want to give him a shout out.
Barbara Bursch
Barbara, thank you for that
in
question.
northern Arizona.
Nice.
From northern Arizona.
Love that. I've never been to Arizona.
I've never been to
you?
either hemisphere.
I went to
of
Sedona,
Arizona.
Phoenix.
Oh, so you've been to Arizona.
Yeah, I've been to
You really
Arizona
have.
for conferences. Well, one was a retreat. I did a mastermind retreat out in Sedona, which was awesome. Sedona's
It
amazing.
looks beautiful out there.
Yep.
Okay, next question. I would like guidance on launching a blog. How? Where do I post it? How often? How long should it be? I have a fear of it for some reason, i.e. accuracy, acceptance, purpose, importance.
Wow.
That's a great question.
So there's about 5 questions in one there, but I think that
Well, we have a
guys
blog.
can-
You want to speak through it through the lens of like what we try to do with our blog, and then we can talk about, what you need to do from a launch
In
standpoint.
terms of like the fear of it, like number one, and I hate to say this because it's so much easier to say than to do, but you have to get over that.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about this before the podcast, and about how like I did not want to be on the podcast. I was scared to death of the podcast. Ever since coming on and doing this and being forced to talk in front of a camera, behind a microphone, having, being put out there on video, having to watch yourself and listen to yourself back,
Which is hard.
which is hard, but like it has helped me grow in so many other ways. I think from, not just personally, but also professionally. Like now we're doing webinars all the time together. I started doing Stay Paid like Instagram recently, and like actually doing stories, which I hate to do. Like I absolutely hate it. I would record them like 18 times. I'd look at this, I look horrible. I sound stupid. I messed up that word.
Same.
Like you've got to get rid of all that because you'll never grow. Life begins at the edge of your comfort zone, and that's really what you have to be able to. You have to be willing to put yourself out there to the world if you're trying to get anything in. In terms of the technical aspects, there are plenty of free blogging software. We won't really go over anyone specific. We use WordPress. But then you need a host, and you can get hosting for very cheap. If you have a website, you can actually have your blog put directly onto your website that way. And then you want to focus on don't focus on writing blogs that are going to get massive SEO results and massive people coming into your blog from a search engine or any other direction like that. Like don't focus on that in the beginning. Just focus on the value. If you've got something that you want to write about, like if you're thinking of starting a blog, it's because you've got something that you want to write about. Just start writing. Don't worry about accuracy. Don't worry about the mistakes. Write like you speak. It's going to attract people even more. And then I would say from a marketing standpoint and a business standpoint, make sure that every blog that you're writing does have some sort of ascension path. So what I mean from that is if you're writing a blog about an experience that you had helping somebody, helping a client with X, include a piece of content, whether it's a video, whether it's an ebook, or any other piece of content, a newsletter that people can subscribe to that ultimately moves them through your next funnel of your marketing. Because a blog for personal reasons or just for fun is great to cut your teeth on writing. But if you're using it for your business, it's not going to bring you the return unless you're walking people to that next stage of your funnel.
I think that's so good. I think part of the question is the benefit. One of the biggest benefits of blogging is the authority that it gives you on the subject matter that you're blogging about. And when people buy, they buy from people in authority, right? You're not going to go get advice from your high school son or daughter about investing in the stock market, right? Well, unless they're Warren Buffett, because they had been investing forever. But you're probably not going to do that. Why? Because they have no authority on that subject matter. So why does a financial advisor want to write about the most frequently asked questions that they get, or write about what's happening in the industry or what's happening with stock? Because naturally, even though they might not get a ton of views, just seeing that constantly, that Luke Acree is constantly putting out content on this subject, my authority goes up in your mind consciously of like, wow. And sometimes subconsciously, wow, this guy, he really knows this stuff. Like he's writing about it all the time. So I think the benefit is authority, and it gets your brand awareness out there, gives you trust and credibility from, to gain people in.
It gives you content for your social media also, gives something for other people to share. It's funny, we talk about authority. We were just talking about this with, I was talking about this with my marketing manager yesterday, how we were looking at someone that had written a book. And we were like, we know what they do. We know what they did. We know how the book was written. But still, every time you see them with that book, you're like, oh my gosh, they wrote a book. They must know what they're talking about.
It's true.
The same idea.
It's so true. We actually have thought to ourselves, we should write a book.
We are going to write a book.
Yeah, tell us if you
going
think
to.
we should write a book. Yeah.
Give us some title ideas.
Yeah.
A title, everything. Okay, are you ready for the next one?
We are.
Who was that from?
That was from Laurie Jo Kotzen.
Thank you, Laurie.
Kotzen?
Kotzen,
100%.
Kotzen,
I'm
something?
probably going to butcher all of these names, so
That's
I
okay.
apologize if I mess your name up. Okay, the next one is from Kathy Falsey. We'll start with the name this
Okay,
time. So
thank
this
you,
is from
Kathy.
Kathy.
Nice.
This says, in your opinion, what is your best lead generating marketing tool for real estate agents who have a small sphere of influence?
So it's really hard to narrow down to a best, but here's what I will tell you. Like, let me give you exactly what my brother Steven did. So you guys heard many, many times, but for new listeners, you know, he's been in the business almost 4 years now. It's 35 transactions his first year, 78 his second, 100 his third. He's over 150, I believe, right now in his fourth year. So what did he do? He didn't have any sphere when he started out, right? He was a new college grad type person in a town.
Came from a customer service job?
Yeah, came from a customer service job. So he had a little sphere, but not a big one. So if you need immediate transactions, which we all do in real estate, well, you need to go where the transactions are. So that would be FSBOs. Why? Because they are actively looking to sell their home. So you need to call FSBOs. You need to call expired listings. They actively tried to sell their home. You need to go run open houses for top producers that will allow you to run their open house because there's active buyers coming in. That is going to be pounding the pavement. It's going to be hard. It's going to be brutal. You need to go do that because all those people are actively looking, and that's going to generate leads immediately for you and also grow your database because Steven grew his database from calling FSBOs, and he wouldn't get them that day. He closed some FSBOs 3 months, 4 months, 6 months later, but he's building a sphere. Second then avenue is really getting into this idea of, hey, you do actually have a bigger sphere than you think.
Yeah.
So the reason why I say that is because you really have to be challenged to think outside of the box. So what would that look like? Your gym. I literally went to Planet Fitness today with a guy who's doing physical training with me. And we made the comment, not even talking about business, just going, it's crazy how the same 10 people in here are the same 10 people every single day. Every time you're consistently with somebody, it breeds familiarity, which is ultimately comfort. Those 10 people, you should strategically figure out how to get their names. The guy at the front desk knows me by name now. And I've only been going there for a couple of months. Now, it's partly his job, but guess what I want to do? If I'm a real estate agent, I want to get his name. I want to get him into my database, that type of idea. So you can build your sphere. It's bigger than what you think. And then third, and I'll let you kind of talk on this a little bit, Josh, is Facebook and social media is so cost effective to generate leads. And maybe you can share the leads stuff that we've been running, kind of brand ad wise, and then also the list of homes. But I think that is another way that if you did those three components, boom, you're gonna have a huge sphere.
No, I was going to go right to the database. Like, you have to start growing your database immediately because that's where the majority of your transactions should be coming from. One way to do that is through Facebook and offering like an item of value. So we actually have a podcast about this called the three Facebook ads that you should be running. And we do a webinar also where we're actually going to walk you through exactly how to do that. That's at ReminderMedia.com/ads. We will walk you through how to set up 3 different Facebook ads that you should be running at all times. One is your branding ad. This is getting you out there to the community. This is becoming the most well-known professional in your community, in your services, right? So it's going to be videos, it's going to be pictures of you, it's going to be introducing you. And then you take that audience, you can kind of retarget to it, or you can take them to the next level, which is your lead magnet ad. This is how you'll build your database. So providing an item of value, whether that's an ebook, you can get an ebook written and designed for you for like $30.
Yeah, if you're a client of ours, we have them for you in your resource library.
We have them for you in the resource library. If you go to ReminderMedia.com/resource-library, we have a new section called Lead Bag. So you can use those, run a Facebook ad to start to build your database that way. What does that allow you to do? It allows you to nurture those clients, allows you to send more emails to them, your recent listings. If you're looking at what item they're downloading, let's say they're downloading a guide for first-time home buyers, now you can tailor your messaging to them to see where they're at in the buying process. And then the last ad that you would want to run is your actual product ad. So these will be your active listings, things that when people request information on them, it's a much higher intent request. And those are the folks that you would want to follow up immediately. That will ultimately start to build your database to really large volumes for very, very cheap. We're talking very cheap. We're talking like a little over $1 a lead to get into your database with those lead magnet ads.
Yep. And then like if you do, what's good about like what we just talked about is the sweat equity is happening on the side of you pounding the phones and door knocking for FSBOs expireds, running the open houses. That's the sweat equity. So you're spending your time there. The check equity is running in the background for you, which is the ads that you're paying for, running on Facebook, collecting those leads, anybody who likes you, engage with, all that stuff. So you can basically attack both at the same time, and because all your time spent here and your money spent here. So.
Love it.
Great job.
Was that Lori?
That was That was Kathy.
Sorry, Kathy,
Laurie was
thank you
before
for
with the
sending in
blog.
that question.
I love that you guys, it's not just like this is the best thing. It's like this is we're going into depth. I really think that I appreciate that.
Yep, that's
But I
exactly
think
what,
that
like,
everyone
if
else
people want to,
appreciates
like,
that
that's
too.
exactly what Steven did. His first year in the business that got him to 35 transactions. A lot of sweat equity.
And where's he
Because
at
he didn't
now?
have the sphere. So now he's over 150. He closed a deal a day every day this month. A deal a day. Or got one under contract,
where's the
I should
applause
say.
at?
So we all know that contract under contract doesn't necessarily mean closed yet. But you got one under contract every single day.
Well, yeah, and those from those Facebook ads that we just talked about, he just spent $1,500 last month. He's working with 5 buyers and 2 are under contract from that $1,500. That's in a month.
Crazy. Okay, so these next couple are anonymous
Okay.
askers.
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 That's definitely not a word, but
Questioners.
we're running.
Submitters.
We're running with submitters. There you go. Yeah, these are anonymous
Questioners.
submitters.
Interrogators, yeah.
So this first one is, why did you start the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this.
Ego. Just kidding.
We've talked about, actually, I don't think we've ever talked about it on the podcast, but we've talked about it on other podcasts. So I've been listening to podcasts since like 2004 when
you've been
podcasts started coming out. It was like one of the only things that kept me up at night while working on the magazine. Like I would be in the office, like working on the magazine overnight, just listening to podcasts. Back then though, it wasn't commercial. Nothing was produced. iTunes, Apple didn't have a podcast app. And I always kind of had it in the back of my mind as we started to build more content with Reminder Media that we should be doing a podcast, but I did not know how to translate what I would talk about on a podcast to our business. Because I was more on the design side and the creative side and the product side. Like I couldn't have a podcast about design, have Reminder Media pay for it, and then, get business or earn clients or build an audience from it. So then once Luke, you really started getting into the content side, excuse me, maybe 5 years ago?
Yeah, something like
you were
that.
running the sales team.
Doing the Above the Noises where we started,
then you
I
were
think.
president. Then we started, as soon as you hit president, we started like going hard into the content,
Yep.
doing the videos and stuff. And it was like our video editor at the time, his name was Mark Randall, producer Mark. You guys, longtime listeners will know producer Mark. He was actually on the podcast. He kept pushing the idea of the podcast, and to the point where it's like, all right, we're doing a podcast. What are we going to call it? Sefton, our original host, said, let's call it Stay Paid.
And I'm like, wait,
that sounds good.
You want me to sit down and like talk for 45
Well, that was like
minutes?
literally the first couple episodes were you just talking for half an hour.
I just talked for half an hour.
Sefton would throw in a question every once in a while.
It's funny. Like in our first topics, like if you want to start like a podcast, it's like we just chose the ones that I felt like I know about. Like this is what I do every day, and I'm not positive it's exactly right. I don't know if I'm the guru of this stuff, but I'm just going to share this. Like I love what Chris Smith said. And one time I was listening to him, who's founder of Curator. He talked about like there's no like I just talk about what I've tried. And what I do.
Yes.
Like, it's not a magic thing. There's no guru out there. It's literally like, hey, I've tried this. It worked for me.
Yeah.
You should try it.
Yeah. Well, then, so if you're thinking about it for your business from the perspective of like, the reason why we did the podcast was obviously to earn business, right? We want to build a
great
tribe.
point. Yep.
We want to connect with people that will ultimately become clients of Reminder Media. The idea of having guests on wasn't really even in our mind as much in the beginning. We just wanted to put content out there to get people into the Reminder Media ecosystem so that maybe one day they would work with us. So if you're thinking about this as starting for your business, you want to approach it from that standpoint, but don't let that be the driver. Like, you notice we don't talk a lot about our business.
Yeah, we're
on
not
this
pitching
podcast.
on the podcast.
We have had people sign up for our with our company who said, why do you have the Stay Paid podcast on your login screen?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that's our podcast. And they're like, no, I listen to that podcast. That's Luke and Josh. Like, that's the Stay Paid podcast. No, that's Reminder Media's podcast. Now, there's something to be said about a balance there.
Yeah.
We need to connect the two maybe a little bit more. But the idea there, obviously, is like, you don't want that to be the driver, but you still have to keep in mind that that is your goal with any content, and make sure that whenever you're speaking or you're picking your topics, like you're picking topics that you do have authority on or that are interesting, but with the idea in mind of, hey, one day these people might use my services, and that's why I'm doing this.
Dude, I think the point that you're driving home about we started this podcast because we want to earn business. I think people get confused with this idea that Gary Vee teaches, and we teach too, which is give value, lead with value. just because you're leading with value doesn't mean you shouldn't try to earn business.
Yeah.
And that will kill you if you think it's all about I'm just going to go out there and give value. Well, you're not a charity. Right. So you can, there's a lot of charities out there. Yeah. You can start a charity. You can be, so don't be ashamed of that. But the point that you earn business by not selling, by helping. So what we are trying to do on this podcast is we're trying to help. From our experience, from the guests that we bring in, it's evolved over time, but never lose sight that, hey, it's not bad, and you should always go, well, how would this podcast ultimately also help me? Because the best relationships are win-win.
Yeah.
So we want to bring you the best content for free to give you guys a win, and we hope we earned your trust that you would look into our stuff and maybe do business with us, or maybe you're never going to do business with us, but who knows, like you refer this podcast to somebody else, all that stuff, it comes back around.
Yep.
Yeah, and if anyone out there is interested in starting their own podcast, you can check out the episode with producer Mark. That was episode 91, and he goes into the really tangible stuff of essentially how we started our
Even
podcast.
the tools. Yep.
Yeah, and all the
extremely
tools.
easy, extremely cost effective to start a podcast. Maybe one of the cheapest things that you can do that seems big. Like if someone says they have a podcast, or you see someone has a podcast, like, oh wow, you got a podcast.
It goes back to the book.
Really, really cheap.
Yeah, it's the
book
same
point.
same
It's the
wavelength.
It's a
credibility.
lot cheaper than writing a book, though.
Yeah.
All right, next question is, well, you guys have kind of already talked about this. Your main reasoning behind starting the podcast was to help with business, but
We're good.
how has the podcast helped your business?
I think from a lead generation standpoint, like I said, we have a lot of people that have signed up because they listen to the podcast, and we're very thankful for that.
I will share a story and shout out our raving fan. We appreciate you, Renee Burke. I was actually calling.
Renee's amazing.
Yeah, Renee is awesome. I was calling, prospects and with the sales team, and I end up calling Renee Burke. I don't know how she was in the queue.
a cold
I can't
call,
remember.
right?
Yeah, I think it was a cold call, and I start talking, and I was introducing myself and everything like that, and she literally stops me. And I can't remember word for word how it goes, but she literally stops me and goes, no, I know exactly who you are. I listen to your podcast all the time. And she ended up giving us a shot. So thank you so much, Renee, for giving us a shot at ReminderMedia. But it's like, that was just one of many, many stories that we hear of people, just the podcast has, it builds, who you're doing business with.
Exactly.
You're doing business with a bunch of goobers, Luke and Josh, who love dad jokes. Well,
Stay
Josh
paid
loves
pals.
them. I don't know how I feel about them yet.
You don't know?
Yeah, maybe when my kid gets here, I'll feel different.
Maybe when you're a dad, you'll appreciate
The other
dad
thing,
jokes more.
the other thing, though, from a perspective of helping with the business, is the people that we've met through interviewing has opened up
That's a
doors.
great point.
And it's crazy. Like, it started with you being part of this Instagram group.
Yeah.
And this disruptor, this idea of this
Shout out to
disruptor,
Sina.
Azari, who was one of the first guests we had on. But we went out to California, you, me, and one of our video editors at the time, or producers at the time, Ryan.
Yep.
And so you spoke at this idea of this disruptor, and then we ended up bringing pretty much everyone from that tour onto the podcast as guests. And every time we would bring someone on, they'd be like, oh, you got to talk to this person. Oh, you got to meet this person. You got to do this. And we've had so many different relationships created that way. Our relationship with Sean Carpenter really kind of started around the podcast and everything.
And now he's done webinars for our clients.
He provides
so
amazing
much good
value
stuff.
and shouts us out all the time.
Point I will point out to people is you're thinking to yourself, you don't have guests. Neither did we. We interviewed employees.
We did.
I interviewed my insurance
Jesse was our
agent.
first guest on the podcast. She's
Yeah.
running the boards.
Keith Wilson, and I love you, Keith, right? So if you listen to this, I love you. But I interviewed my own insurance agent for the company, Keith Wilson. So look, we're ReminderMedia. We were a multi-million-dollar company at the time starting a podcast, and we still didn't have any like guests. We were like, I don't know, who are we going to get? And so we just used our sphere and network, and it's grown from there. And that's kind of how it happens.
And I think Peter Lorimer's podcast, he was the one, I'm sure a lot of people have said it, where if you are starting out, especially in real estate or something like that, going and finding people in the community that you can interview and you can talk to immediately builds that, relationship with them, but it also gives you content. So it doesn't necessarily need to be people exactly related to your industry.
so
really anyone would be
No,
good
you're
for that.
100%
The
spot on,
coffee
especially with
shop.
the local business. Yeah.
Okay, next question. We got two more.
All right.
You
Wow.
guys are doing a great job.
Well, how are we doing on time?
We're at 27 minutes.
Okay, all right.
Not bad.
So-
Staying in
Super
there.
expanded mega silver dollar. This has extended to like being a full dollar bill.
We are at that full dollar. Okay. What is your favorite part about doing Stay Paid? Like, what's your favorite thing?
The
about
money, the fame,
it? Staying paid.
the riches,
You go,
the yachts. I have
The
so many
yachts.
yachts because of this show.
Yeah, toy.
No,
little
you know what I
yachts.
really love? Having to think about the topics. Like this forces me to think about the things that we're going to talk about, because we have to come on here with some level of authority. We have to come on here with some level of statistics or actual numbers that
Knowledge,
we've run or
yeah.
that we've researched. So like it forces me every single week to really kind of work on that. I think it's the 7th habit, Stephen Covey, of sharpening the saw, right? The 7 habits of highly effective people is sharpening the saw. So it forces me to sit down, think about what we're going to talk about, and then actually be able to enunciate it as clear as I try to do each episode. Although I do tend to stumble over some words here and
You
and
do a
then.
phenomenal job.
Mainly the intro and the outro, which is the same every time. But I think that's what I've enjoyed the most.
Yeah. I think for me, that's a great answer. I think for me, it's I am learning as well when I'm interviewing these people. And when I'm looking for like the golden nuggets or the action item at the end, you guys got to understand, like I do this action item at the end, but it's because the whole interview, I'm literally learning and listening, and I'm like, what is the thing that is really impacting me? There are so many things that I've taken from the podcast and implemented. Like right now, like we interviewed Michael Hellickson, which is a huge coach in the real estate industry, awesome. And he talked about this double dial technique and then a text message. We're literally trying to implement that with our sales team right now. Like we took that from the podcast to implement with our sales team. So there's so many things that I learn in interviewing the guests that I'm just like, whew, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And you guys get to hang out with us.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
that too.
And
I was
we
waiting
get
on
to
that,
hang out
Jesse.
with
More
Did you hear
Grace,
that?
Arielle, and Jesse, yeah.
No, just kidding.
And we get to dress up in silly costumes every
Yeah.
year.
That's
Yeah,
true.
every once
Every
Is this coming
Halloween.
out after the Halloween episode? Okay. So if you haven't seen the Halloween special this year, you have to go back and
Yes.
watch it, if for no other reason, just to see producer Arielle's amazing intro.
Thank you.
Because it's completely different for the Halloween, because Luke and I
it's a
dress
lot of
up.
fun. We love that. Okay, last question. Are you ready?
Ready?
You guys ask this question every week on the podcast, so it's only fair.
What are the
that we
3 things
ask
I
you.
do every day? That coffee? No.
Yeah.
The other question that you ask all the time: if you could go back and tell your younger selves anything, what one thing would that be?
I would say to younger Luke, the success is sticking with the details. There's been so many times on my journey growing ReminderMedia that I think it's time for me to, I don't have to pay attention to that detail. I don't have to get in, whether it's with IT. I don't have to get in and be involved at the detail level with the projects and stuff. I don't have to get in with the sales team and what I've learned, and this is just real, raw truth, is every time I step away, and some people would say, you should delegate but every time I step away, I go,
Delegate does not mean neglect.
correct.
Right.
You need to know the details of your business, the details of what you're trying to do. And it's not that you shouldn't trust. You should always trust and empower people, but you should always inspect what you expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would tell myself is,
Which isn't that another habit?
yeah,
Dude,
I think so.
2 Stephen Covey habits in one podcast.
Boom.
Look at that.
I think I gave this answer the last time that we did the Q&A with L and J. Q&A with L and J.
The marketing guy.
Wow. That's this week's
think
title.
and I don't know, this one's always tough to answer, but I think I would just say, like, have more fun, enjoy the moments more. Don't be so, like, I would get so serious about things, especially as we were building the business. I would take everything so seriously. And I think as we've grown and we've added so many people, and people like you have come on, like, we've been able to just like, no, it's okay to try it and mess up. Like, it's okay to fail. It's okay to, you just have to try stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect. I would let perfection get in the way of they say
Progress.
that perfect is the enemy of good, because you're not doing it. You're not taking the action. You're thinking about it. You're analyzing it. You're trying to get it 100% right. So that's what I would go back and tell my younger self, would be like, no, just do it. It'll be okay. You're going to learn more from trying it and doing than you will from taking the time to get it perfect.
That's why Josh and I are such a good team, because his weakness is he's got to actually let go, and my weakness is don't let go. You notice that?
Yeah, you guys balance each
It's
other
because our
out really well.
personalities,
Yeah.
it's like, I'm just like, of course it's going to happen. And he's like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Love that. Those are all the questions that I had.
That's amazing.
Wow, thank you, Arielle, for coming on
anytime.
and asking those questions. I don't really have an outro or any special thing to say other than like we just want to thank the listeners so much for all of your support. We every time someone like shares about the podcast or says something or gives us a review or comments on a YouTube video, it's always fun.
It really means a
will
lot.
never
It
get
really does.
old. It's always like, oh my gosh, like people are listening, people learning, especially when we get like compliments and people taking away things from the guests, like being able to have the guests on and hear your guys' thoughts on that. I just want to give a shout out and thank you to all of our listeners.
I agree, man. I second that. It's always funny when you do art, right, and content, you want to do it in a way that you don't care what people think, but you do it for other people.
Yeah.
So you're like, of course I care what you think. But no, it truly means the world to us when we see people resharing it, posting it, commenting, and also ultimately giving us feedback that it really helped them. I think we got a testimonial on iTunes, a review on iTunes that they implemented it and it really has
They got
changed.
3 listings from it.
Yeah, it really has
I haven't
changed
read
their
that one yet.
business. And it's just like, that stuff is amazing to hear. So we really appreciate it. We appreciate all the support. We can't wait till we're sitting here at episode 400.
Absolutely.
Going, what the heck happened? And maybe we've interviewed like Tony Robbins by that time.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for listening. If you're looking for a birthday gift for the Stay Paid Pals, if you're looking to get us a 200th birthday gift, head on over to iTunes, throw us a 5-star rating and leave a comment, and make sure to share the podcast with your friends and your family, your business workers, your coworkers, your employees, your bosses, everybody that you know. That will be the best birthday gift you could ever get, Luke and Josh, other than these sneakers. I mean, these sneakers will be...
Shout out to Maddie for the great art on those shoes.
You can get more of this podcast, get all the links. I dropped a lot of links in this one. So you can get all of those links over in the show notes at staypaidpodcast.com. And you can follow Stay Paid Podcast. We're at Stay Paid Podcast on Instagram. And you can email Luke and I directly, podcast@remindermedia.com. For this episode of Stay Paid, I'm Joshua Stike.
Guys, and I'm Luke Aker, and the action item from this one is keep going. Be consistent. We're 200 episodes in now, and man, has it evolved. Have we been through some ups and downs with it? So, changes, lots of changes, but it's been amazing to see the results when you stay consistent. So whatever you're doing right now, just stay consistent in it. Keep pivoting, keep evolving, but don't give up, don't quit, because pain is temporary. Quitting lasts forever. Remember, the difference between a top producer and a mediocre producer in every single business we work in is top producers take action. Take action on that today.